When faced with an existential threat, animals and extremely tough lumberjacks will do anything required to stay alive, no matter how extreme. The gaming industry is in that position right now, and people like Bobby Kotick had best start getting their pocket knives out. And if they think they're getting away with just a limb or two, they are sorely misguided. The Activision Blizzard CEO Bobby Kotick recently promised that he would work for bare minimum wage. Minimum wage in California, mind you, until Activision Blizzard was fixed. That's a paltry $62,000 a year. No wonder businesses are fleeing California like it was the second coming of the Black Plague. $62,000 minimum wage. Oh heavens. But thing is, of course, this ain't gonna do a damned thing, and it is a remarkably shallow gesture as well, seeing as just last June this year, Bobby Kotick already accepted a $155 million bonus package. Yeah, he can probably survive on $62,000 for quite a while with that amount of bank. Though, then again, if he intends to stay at that salary level until he has fixed Activision Blizzard, he had best be able to as well. Because the rot that has infested Activision Blizzard has nothing to do with the company's ability to make games. Activision Blizzard can collectively shit their pants as many times as they want with as many Diablo immortals as they want, so long as their eternal deity, the World of Warcraft cash cow, continues mooing happily up there above in the clouds atop its literal mountain of money. But Bobby Kotick, and far more importantly, all of the developers that made the company into what it was, perhaps most accurately, will probably not be there to see it, as they are currently experiencing an internal workers' revolt that started quite a while ago when a bunch of workers managed to get the Californian government to sue Blizzard. This then unleashed an absolute avalanche of consequences as several more local and federal entities lined up to take shots at Activision. The most obvious and immediate threat was the federal investigation from the EEOC. That was something Activision Blizzard could not ignore, as that meant they could be followed legally wherever they might decide to go. And so they settled immediately. $18 million to be set aside in a fund for eligible victims, in addition to hiring on a diversity commissar to make sure that Blizzard hired people with the correct skin color and genitalia, as well as an EEOC representative to stay at their offices, look over their shoulders, and make sure they do not commit any further heresies. And I'm sure that the bosses over at Blizzard figured that they got off very easy with this. $18 million is absolutely nothing for Blizzard. It's a day's income, probably, from the cash cow up above, if even that. But they don't see the forest for all the goddamn trees. A diversity officer is the absolute last thing they need right now, as the very reason why they've got this problem is the enforced diversity at their company. They're not hiring the best, the brightest, or the most loyal workers, they're hiring those that tick the maximum amount of boxes. And Bobby Kotick, in addition to his pay cut, has promised a zero-tolerance policy towards sexual misbehavior. Oh yes, that'll fix it, because previously they were very tolerant towards sexual misbehavior, except for all of the people they fired and let go and the internal investigations they've already launched into these things, and, I remind you also, again, fired people for. Kotick also committed to increasing the number of people who were born right, in terms of genitalia and skin color, by a further 50%, which I'm sure will calm down the accusations of sexual misconduct. Oh yes, more people hired because of their melanin count and their junk. I'm sure they won't be complaining about being treated like token hires in a year or so. But we don't need to await that easily predictable future, because tomorrow is already here with the Paizo union workers. Paizo, the creators of Pathfinder and Starfinder, have had lengthy and detailed complaints made about the working conditions at the company. Yet another very progressive company where employees felt that they firmly believed that they were diversity hires. And in objection to this tokenistic behavior, along with, again, a long line of other complaints, 40 freelancers all refused to take on any further commissions or even to hand in the work they had already finished to Paizo, bringing the company to its knees overnight and making them recognize the Paizo's workers' union, whose primary battle cry is an increase in salaries, since they are dreadfully low apparently, below the living wage of the area of uptown Seattle. Unfortunately, the company can already barely make ends meet and have to rely on massive numbers of mercurial part-timers. And what, pray tell, do you think is going to happen to a company that already can barely make ends meet when they have to deal with a union questioning every single firing, dragging it out, potentially threatening court cases and lengthy procedures, whilst also arguing for higher wages? Oh, I'm sure Paizo will do just fine, if there'll be any employees left after the cutbacks. And of course, as I'm sure you already noticed, the commonality here is that both of these, despite their massively varying sizes, are both very progressive companies. But it's not just Paizo or Activision Blizzard. This is something that a lot of people have figured out now. Namely, that they can get potentially a lot of power within a company if they make a big enough stink about harassment or sexual misconduct, things that the current day wokest SJW crowd and the mainstream media find damnably sexy and interesting to cover. Hell, I'm part of the problem there too, because I really enjoy laughing at progressive companies getting bitten by the snakes they press to their bosoms. Another company that's currently in trouble is Paradox Interactive. They fired their CEO for differences of opinions, you see. Never mind the fact that the CEO in question had overseen some of Paradox's most horrific failures since the company's inception. Complete and utter coinkydink, and then yet another coincidence struck. Mere days thereafter, you see, a union report leaked out on the internet. And what did it allege? Oh, you already know. Sexism, harassment, tokenism, and general abuse. Luckily, one woman has the solution to how Paradox could fix it all, how they could change and become a better company. All they need to do is to change their perception of what harassment is. Oh yes, allow me to redefine harassment in such a way that I will have an even larger stick with which to shame you in public with. What's that? You don't want yet another leak in the media, you say? Well, we can solve this rather easily by, say, promoting me, for example. And this is being used as a tactic now more and more ever since Activision Blizzard was exposed to their own internal coup attempt, because it has been demonstrated to be an effective weapon. And unsurprisingly, having been handed the stick, they swiftly started using it. Over the course of just a few months, we've seen it at Activision Blizzard, we've seen it at Paizo, we've seen it at Paradox, and then they realized, hold on, what if we hammer a nail into the stick as well? And then we saw it at Facebook, the next level of the corporate coup d'etat, where the accusations were not wishy-washy or shady or hidden behind amorphous groups of people. Instead, it was presented in the form of a single, brave blonde woman that looked surprisingly decent on camera. Coinkydinks are useful here as well. And she was received by unanimous, standing, rapturous applause by a unified mainstream media, which just so happened to perhaps be colluding a little bit on the side to release their documents to the maximum effect. It's almost enough to make a man into a conspiracy theorist, isn't it? But do not believe your lying eyes, friends. This is all, yet again, coinky-dinky-winkies, and you should simply accept it as such, shouldn't you? This is everything that we saw with Activision Blizzard, but on a much larger scale. Just like the Activision Blizzard employees were quick to say, no, don't unsubscribe from World of Warcraft, that's our income you're messing with there. We don't want you to attack the company because we intend to take the company. Keep paying, piggies. We need your financial support. And just like that, the Facebook whistleblower? Oh no, Facebook is not the problem. Its market share is not the problem. It owning Instagram is not an issue. Facebook does not need to be broken up, and it certainly doesn't need to be regulated, controlled, or reined in. The only problem is that the wrong pair of hands are controlling the levers of power. We would like to have those levers for ourselves, thank you very much. But what, if anything, can be done about this? Well, this is where we finally swing on back to the tortured metaphor I used at the beginning of the video. Because all of these examples have one thing in common: wokeism, progressivism. And it is in the blood and bone marrow of these companies. Individuals who have been hired not for their skill, their expertise, their loyalty, or their drive, but because they have the correct politics, or even worse, simply the correct shade or correct plumbing downstairs. Unsurprisingly, they're not going to have a whole lot of interest in working their damnedest for somebody else's corporation, when they could simply just take it all. Because the modern day SJWs do not create, they take. And the only way you're gonna deal with this is straight up a large-scale breakdown and purge of the corporations, a complete restructure of the hiring practices, to focus on merit, drive, passion, and interest rather than a diversity checklist. Though that even is not going to be enough either. Cronyism is rampant within these companies, always have, and to an extent it always will be. But with the current people in power, they will simply hire further people who agree with them. And there's even diversity checklists to make it all seem legit and proper. The old guard need just as much purging as there needs to be assurances that the younger generation coming in are not crazed ideologues. This is not a quick fix. This is not a fix that'll take a year, or 2 years, or 3. It'll probably take just as long as it took for these companies to be fully subverted and infiltrated in the first place. 5 to 10 years. These companies are massive, ginormous entities. They do not turn on a dime. Hell, even a small example like Paizo is still like 50 employees. That's not a small organization. And when maybe 20 of them are rampant ideologues who have now also formed a union, making sure that it's going to be damnably hard to fire them, it's going to take a long time to fix it. And that's even if they're interested in doing it. Interestingly, Mark Zuckerberg's recent initiative Meta seems to be a large-scale reorganization of the Facebook corporation. It would be an ideal opportunity to clean some serious house. Whether or not Zuckerberg is aware enough of the situation he has found himself in to take the necessary steps is another question entirely. If I were to be optimistic, I would say in about a year's time or so, start looking to see if you can't find mentions of large-scale layoffs in the mainstream media, particularly at companies like Activision Blizzard and Facebook. Perhaps some accompanying whining that it feels like they are being targeted for certain characteristics. Like loud and vociferous advocacy for certain fringe political opinions, perhaps, or engagement in union advocacy. Incidentally, quite a few of these companies have already hired independent auditors or outside law firms, many with a history of solving union problems. Maybe we will finally begin seeing some kind of a turnaround at these companies now that eventually, at long last, they might begin to realize that this isn't quite as profitable as they had once thought. Only time will tell. Meanwhile, however, if you enjoyed the video, please do consider leaving a like and a comment. Doesn't need to be anything special. You could comment on the weather, or merely offering up a prayer to the algorithmic gods. What YouTube cares about is the triple engagement: a view, a like, and a comment. Hell, it matters a hell of a lot more than the subscribe button these days when YouTube sends out notifications based primarily on the way in which the goat's tail feathers, yes, tail feathers, are flapping in the wind on that particular evening. Until next time, I have been Arch. Thank you all very much for watching, and I hope to see you all again soon. Have a good day.